Our next example, once again, all they're going to tell us is factor completely. Uses another very special unique technique as well. One that we don't use very often and actually takes some problems that need to be set up fairly well before we even start. But I do want to show us because this is actually what we're going to use to do our entire next set of problems. We're going to try and set up problems to be like this. Now, what makes this very unique, and you only see a couple of these on the homework when you see this whole with the 4-term polynomial starting with an x cubed. What we're going to want to do here, the book calls it factor by grouping. I like to call it divide and conquer. Cut it in half. Look at each half individually. Group those first two together. Group the second two together. Again, this is the only problem where we're going to have the 4 terms, and you'll see where we apply this in the next few examples. But for each side, factor out a GCF. My GCF here, 2x squared. Notice that we're completely ignoring the other side right now. When I factor out that 2x squared, it's going to leave me with just an x plus 4. And once again, if we look at distributing that side, 2x squared times x is 2x cubed. 2x squared times 4 is 8x squared. I've only factored that side. Now, when we look at the other side, most of the time there will be a factor that we can pull out, like maybe common 2 or common 3 or something else. There isn't one here, but there's always a common factor of 1. And if we were to say 1 times x plus 4, we would see why. 1 times x is x, 1 times 4 is 4. It might seem silly why we do that, but notice what we've set up is just like some of those example problems we had earlier. When I have x plus 4 and x plus 4, now I have this common factor. That's what kind of makes this a special problem, is that they have that set up to where we're able to do this right away. Kind of a loaded question. This is what we're going to be setting up later. Now, one other side note that I want to put on this is that be prepared for that negative leading coefficient giving me a negative GCF back here. If this is a negative sign, make sure that's a negative sign. You'll see some of those in your homework. We'll see some of those come up shortly, but I do want to add that side note. Remember back to some of the earlier techniques in factoring when we talked about factoring out a common binomial, as we call it. X plus 4 is in common, and only because they're both x plus 4. If one of those were an x minus 4, or if one of those were a 3x plus 4, there would be no proceeding forward. But because they both are, factor out that x plus 4. When we factor it out, we're left with 2x squared plus 1. Earlier problems, and go back and look at those if we want to when we had that common binomial. But now, if we want to check to see that we were correct, to see if that's the correct factored form, let's FOIL it back out. X times 2x squared, 2x cubed. X times 1 plus x. 4 times 2x squared plus 8x squared. 4 times 1 plus 4. Notice they're a little bit out of order, and that's okay. That's still the factored form. This is what we'll be setting up later. I call it divide and conquer.